So, so today's lesson is pretty important as far as your role as a servant goes. It's about visitations. The wonderful thing about it is it's also pretty intuitive. Why? Because we're all human beings. So can anyone, I guess, briefly, succinctly tell me what is a visitation? Like, why do we have a lesson about visitations? And obvious answers are acceptable. Like, why does it matter in service, I guess?
I guess so that you, like, connect with your students, like, on a deeper level so that you know who they are and you can help them better.
It's exactly it, yeah. Dio, did you have something to add?
I was going to say, I'm not sure I can qualify why exactly it's better, but I know that in a lot of St. Paul's epistles, he emphasizes that he's coming to visit the same people he's writing about, and that it's more important that he sees them in person than they just see this letter.
Precisely. In fact, it's a great segue to our first Bible verse. We're all really our only one, but go ahead, read it.
Acts 15:36. Then after some days, Paul said to Barnabas, "Let us now go back and visit our brethren in every city where we have preached the word of the Lord and see how they are doing."
Pretty simple line, but it does suggest like that we're going back to visit people we've already seen. Why? To see how they're doing. And why does that matter to us as human beings? Like, I can see you guys once a week, right? Like, that's great. But how well do we know each other after like a half hour each week? Like, you know my name, you know who I'm related to, but you don't know a whole lot about me, right? And I know in theory you guys are, not in theory, but I know you go to a certain school, blah, 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 but it's about it, right? Like, and we can come at week after week and still sort of walk away with just that sort of limited knowledge of one another. But that's not, how is that going to serve you at all? Like, it's not going to serve you. It's certainly not serving me. And I think the whole idea is what Grace was referring to, is building rapport. The whole point of and I can't ask of you in the short time frame once a week for us to get to know each other like really well. That's going to be a lasting impression, right? So, all right, so before I start rambling, let us say, okay, I want to prove to you that this is actually a very intuitive topic. So we're going to kind of do this like, it's going to be less lecture style, more like discussion, because I'm fairly certain that before we even look at this, you can come up with most of this lesson intuitively, okay? So, can we throw out objectives? Why have visitations? So I'm going to go ahead and give you the first one that Grace already said, which is to build rapport, okay? So rapport is, I know you, you know me, we trust one another, you can confide in me, I can help direct you, etc., etc. It's less about like an obligation and more about a friendship, correct? Okay, what's another reason we might value the idea of visitation?
Different environment.
Perfect. You're kind of there to understand the environment from which the student comes, correct? Because you're all here, and in my eyes, everything seems well and normal and adjusted and fine. But at home, there might be stuff going on that's impacting your spiritual life. And that's ultimately, as a servant, your main concern. It is the spiritual lives of your, Sunday school students. I mean, at the end of the day, like, yeah, there are so many ways we can help one another, but my main concern is your spiritual lives. Because also in my estimation, if your spiritual life is struggling, it's going to seep into every other thing, and a lot of other things might be struggling. So in the grand order, like priority, focusing on a spiritual life is actually focusing on other things as well. So we'll call this environment. And I'm just going to point out, environment does not mean that we're sending you out as like intelligence officers to gather intel. Like, you're not there to like notice everything and write it down secretly in a notepad. No, environment is understand like family situation, personal situation, school situation, and if that's something that could potentially be a struggle, or if that's something that's actually helping them, like, you know, a strengthening factor in their lives. So just note it. It's not something you have to go and gather like detailed notes, but be aware. Do they have a brother, a sister, parents? And just, I'm going to insert an anecdote from my own sister because she's a social worker by, you know, profession, and so it's sort of in her, like, she by nature tends to do visitations like as it's part of her work, it's also part of the spiritual thing, so she's very well trained, let's say. So in one of her visitations, she actually noted the environment was really hostile. Like, it was one of those situations where, you know, recent immigrants, they don't quite understand the way things operate here, and it was very clear just from being in that environment that there might be some, like, you know, abuse issues and things that were just not great. And they might show up on Sunday fine, because a lot of people cope really well. But when you go home and you see it, you're like, wow. You know, it's one of those things where you're like, I can't, you know, and there are things that can be done, you know what I mean? And that's an extreme. I don't expect to go and see abusive environments everywhere I go, but that is something that becomes sort of your, like, it's your burden a little bit. I don't want to use the word burden, but you get privy to a lot of sort of information and sensitive information, and it becomes sort of, you have to learn how to handle it. And I can say that if I were in her position, I would find someone to get advice from, because as a person who's not trained in social work, I wouldn't know the first thing to do, properly anyway, you know what I mean? So that's one thing, environment. And then the other two, I would just say are I mean, I'm sure you guys could come up with this on your own, but it's basically to get to know the student better, which falls under rapport, and then lastly, and less so in this age group, but the age groups that you will see, is to get to know their parents. And that's pretty valuable when you're dealing with minors, right? Parents have a lot of sway, right? So I'm gonna write here, parents. And this is just, you know, student, okay? So pretty obvious, those are like the purpose of visitations. Now, the next thing we're gonna talk about is a few quick sort of logistics, and again, these are sort of pointers that I think Uncle Victor has helped sort of assimilate over his years because, well, he has much wisdom. And so I think what I'll do here is more or less sort of...
Let me just, excuse me.
Yeah, go ahead.
Inject here something. This is, I always thought it's a living document. Very soon, God help us in that, we'll put it online. So if you have any, as you read this, and of course you and Maria and everybody, if you have comments on any of those things, you can just email it to me, and I will look at it, and definitely we can include it in our future edition or whatever. This is the second edition, but we could definitely electronic version would be very simple and easy. Please contribute.
You guys all have these, right? Like the physical copies. Okay. Yeah. So this is just so you have some context, page 126 of your book. Okay, so this is more like the nitty-gritty. When you go to a visitation, what might you imagine is going to become sort of like a practical thing you're gonna have to do. Like, let's assume that we are all flawed human beings who do not have perfect memories and things escape our memory. What is one thing one might do or expect to be doing while, actively doing visitations?
I don't know, like reintroducing yourself, re-getting to know. Like if it's like pretty soon into the class, which you might not know what their name is.
It's a very
It's just
legitimate
I
concern.
mean, like,
Yes.
some people are good with names and some people aren't. And if you're one of those people that's not, then that might be something you have to do.
It's very valid, actually. Yeah, learn if you have to play, mind games or whatever. Or you have like 3 Donnas in a classroom or something. Like, sometimes you have to do memory like tricks, and yeah, that's a whole other thing. But anyway, so I think more or less what I started getting at was how are you going to keep track of information? You're seeing like 12 people. Let's just throw out a number, and they each have individual circumstances and. I personally know I don't have a good memory. So what's something you should be doing, like in the way of remembering this stuff?
Maybe
Go
I'm,
ahead.
please.
No. Go ahead.
Maybe I'm underthinking this, but Excel?
No, you are right on. Excel, keeping whatever it is that you do. I mean, I wouldn't go and create like elaborate whatever. Just contextually, like I might make a note, something like, if someone were to visit me, then that note would say, has 1 sister, 2 parents, etc. Maybe even note the names of these people, because again, building rapport means, being friends. Friends generally know each other's names, their families. You know what I mean? Like, you don't just know a number. Oh, thou art the person with a family of 6. Like, not helpful, like not even really great. So just gathering the information that makes each person unique. And again, it's like kind of meant to be for the servant. So if you're not a tech person, don't force yourself to use tech, because no one's going to be asking for you to send all of this data to them. It's for you. It's to help you build the rapport you need to successfully reach out to your students. So I would say, logistics, we'll do record keeping. And again, there is no science to this. Just do it in a way where you remember. And then, generally speaking, true, false. Should you meet these people, should you meet your students in a group, or should you meet them one-on-one? That's not a true, false statement, is it? True, false. Should you meet your student one-on-one? True. True. Now, why might you imagine is that necessary?
Because you see them in a different light when you're by themselves, as opposed to when they're with their family or when with their friends.
Perfect. So you create an environment where there's a lot more room to talk openly, right? That's one thing. Also, the nature of the visitation, and I guess I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but the whole point of this is to one of the things is to suss out their spiritual life, if you will. So are every one of us in the same place at this moment? Like, aren't we all sort of in a differing point in our lives, or level of intensity, or et cetera, I mean, so if I have a group talk about it, it will get boring, because I am individually going to find out information about each person. So while I'm talking to Dio, all of you guys might zone out. 2, Dio is not going to reveal a whole lot if I am asking about his personal business right in front of everyone, because, well, I mean, I wouldn't either. It's just, that's human nature. And again, building rapport, sort of not a group effort. It's getting to know each other a little bit more personally. And the thing about rapport is you don't have to be closed off. Like, just because you're the servant doesn't mean you are not human with struggles. You can commiserate, you can admit, this is something I struggle with, you know, this is what I do to help myself. It may not be even the same struggle that your student has, but that shared sort of discussion of, I'm flawed, I am human, this is how I deal with that problem, that helps, that gives like motivation to that person in front of you.
One thing I would just add, I think it's a really good tool and a skill you can use, but I would be really, really intentional and careful about doing that, because you want to make it about the kid you're serving. You don't want to make it about you. You don't want to make it about, this isn't your therapy, or they're not there to mentor you. So what you want to do is you want to think, if I'm going to share something about my personal life or about my spiritual struggle, am I doing it directly with the intention of benefiting them? Is this so that they can feel like I'm validating them, I'm normalizing it, they get it, I'm with them, and I have something to offer them? Or am I doing it for some other reason? Because I need to vent about something frustrating that happened, because I want to impress them, whatever. If it's another reason, check yourself and hold it to yourself and talk to someone else, not with your Sunday school kid. If it's because it's all about them, then you can share. So it's a good thing to share about yourself, but only if it's about them.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Again, so I guess that's another thing remember, the whole thing about visitations is to benefit your student. So if it is going to be something that helps them open up or helps build the rapport, do it. But yeah, don't alienate, I guess, is sort of the bottom line. You're not better than them. You're just there to help mentor them, right? Help steer them. So again, as far as notes go, I'm just going to read this one. You can keep notes about any observations, including things like names of parents, father of confession, etc., etc. And so on that note, what are some of the things that you specifically want to get out of, like, when you are keeping notes? What might you specifically address, being that this is a visit about spiritual life? So like, we can talk a bit about, favorite hobbies, what are you studying, etc., etc., and that does give context. But again, our main goal is to figure out where the student is and just help them to establish kind of where they want to go. Because I think the one thing about school, I would say, is that you know where you're starting and, in theory, where you're ending. And all the classes you take are to get you from point A to point B. So even though it can be painful sometimes, we know why we're doing it, right? So sometimes these finite, milestone markers are for us, they help keep us going, especially when things get rough, right? So the problem with our spiritual life is we don't have someone with a report card and over us and a degree that we receive in the end. It's a lot of self, you've got to kind of push yourself. And so I think if you think of it as you are that person who is helping to identify those things that often we just sort of decide privately to ourselves and may not even consciously decide. It's sort of like, I've been born and I've been baptized and Abuna says this, my parents say this, so I'm just going to follow this. And we sort of almost fall into it and follow it almost mindlessly. And so to keep us from becoming almost like drones, sometimes you've got to challenge yourself to say, hey, what do I really want to do? I know I'm a Christian, but what am I trying to do? Or where am I going, or who am I serving, right? And so that's what, as a servant, your job is to assess, help the student verbalize, where am I? And that could be way we're not expecting perfection. We're expecting okay, just establish where you are and then decide what's your goal, where are you headed? And then your job is to help get them there. Does it mean that you're Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think one of the pieces, in addition to figuring out the goal and helping them get there, is also working them to figure out what the barriers are.
Amen.
So like, are there sin issues that are getting in the way? Is there apathy? Is there problems at home? Are there social personal issues? Are they having like cognitive doubts about faith or about the church or about sacraments or whatever? So you want to kind of understand what, okay, yeah, I want to be more spiritual, I want to be closer to God, but what is it that's stopping you right now from doing it?
Yes, very much so. Sorry,
No?
I don't even actually know if you can read my writing, but
Goals and barriers.
yeah. So more or less, when you're taking notes, I mean, you don't have to sit there with a notebook with your student there, but when you walk away from the visit and you're trying to note like what you learned, that's kind of more or less what you're trying to gauge. And you don't have to sit there and be like, Grace, what are your goals? What are your barriers? Like, that's the whole point of rapport, is you're gonna glean that eventually over time. So those are the things you wanna know. And again, any information you get, the objective is to help your student. So if talking about their personal life is going to help you help your student, great. If talking about their personal life is merely gossip, that's just a violation, guys. That's like just nosy. Don't do that. You know what I mean? So if a relationship in their lives is a huge stumbling block for them, then you use diplomacy. You still don't talk about it like you're the girlfriend and you're just gonna
They're terrible.
rail on someone. No, that's not the idea. The point is, okay, fine, how do you more or less verbalize all those things that we might be not really saying but thinking. We kind of get broody a little as human beings. Like, you sit there and you think about it and eventually if it never like sees the light of day, if you never speak it might become bigger than it is. And that's just true of like human nature. So again, you're trying to use wisdom, gathering information to help them. And then, I like this one. This is a good rule, I think. But I guess, what do you think would be a good rule as to how many visits you ought to aim for? So this one's kind of, that
Per
one's
student.
tough. Huh?
Per student.
Per student,
Like,
yeah.
like throughout the year?
Yeah,
Okay.
so I might just go ahead and read this to you because otherwise it's just a guessing game. But basically, you're trying to visit them at least twice a year. But again, based on each person's circumstance, you might feel like, okay, this is a student I need to visit a little bit more. Or if you've run into an acute problem, you're like, okay, I need to focus a little bit on this person. So, more than more than 2 visits. But I guess at minimum, 2 is a good number to go by, right? So that's just one way to help you as a servant organize your schedule. Make sure, if I have 10 students, each get 2 visits a year, I have 20 visits, I have X number of weeks, etc., etc. That's more like logistics. But keep that in mind, at least 2, but recognize you might need more than that. Did you want to say something? Okay. All right. And the other thing, prepare some suitable gifts to take when you're visiting the students. I would say, depending on the age level, I know if I come with food to you guys, we might become best friends. And it's true, at a certain age, you're just there are certain things that are gifty and other things that are just sort of okay, this is silly. When I was a kid, if someone gave me a Saints picture, that was cool. But when I was in college, and I've had 35 of the same Saints picture, I would rather the free pizza, you know what I'm saying? So, but again, that's all part of rapport. That's not just for giggles, it's for rapport. If you exchange a gift to someone, you're showing investment. Okay, so, yes.
While this seems to you guys is not maybe that important, but really in my experience, it is so important.
Oh, no,
I guess
agree.
I never been to any visitation without a visit, a standard. And even sometimes I used to keep in my wallet some small pictures just in case. And whenever I go outside, I meet somebody even in the street, so this could be considered a visitation too. Maybe Anne Marie will talk about that. But you are constantly, as a servant, seeking out and try to find out what your students and previous students are doing. But leaving something will have somehow this beautiful. It definitely helps the rapport part. And now there is some connection again, the human nature. You give something. So bear in mind that I remember. Abuna Mikhail, he showed me a Bible, small Bible, and say, my teacher in Sunday school, whatever, 30 years ago gave me this Bible, and he was so proud. I remember him showing me this. So it's always stuck in my head how important it is to have some gift.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, I always got excited to receive gifts. Let's not kid ourselves. Okay, so the next part of this lesson is more or less like kind of a what to do, like literally a list of how to do this. So this section is called Visitation at Home. And this one's really just more like a what to do first. Well, I mean, are you just gonna knock on the door without announcing that you're coming? No. So pick up a phone, call. And let's just assume that we're talking about students who are minors, so they're still living with their parents. So you're gonna call, you will introduce yourself to the parents and, mention, who you are, where you're coming from, and why you're coming. What's something like logistically to keep in mind? You're a representative of the church community. Should you show up in, I don't know, a midriff, it's not time to be racy, right? So dress appropriately. Pretty basic stuff, like just be a living example, more or less. Take a gift, we got that. What's something probably you don't think of but is really, really important before you as a servant go to minister in someone's home? We're all human, right? So what's one thing one ought to do before they go in and, preach the word?
Pray.
Pray, like take time to pray, even if that's in the car on your drive there, but do it. Pray, because you are hoping that God helps you and speaks through you and uses you in the manner that this person needs, right? It's not your show. You're there to, minister on behalf of God, right? So pray and make it a really important part of your ministry. Like
It's crucial.
Yeah.
Don't consider visitation unless you're praying before. And if you ask me, because it just has to be a part of.
Exactly.
You have to involve God in the process, or else it's just a social hour.
Amen. Okay, I should stop saying that because that's weird. But anyway, the other thing is just, when I'm like reflecting on this lesson, like when you do something, like just the very nature of doing something makes you committed. Like, yes, a visitation is doing something, but when you pray for someone else and you make this prayer about someone else's well-being, that in and of itself breeds the passion that you want as a servant. Like just that simple act helps to make you like super committed to like, I want Dio to succeed, so I'm going to really, really listen to what Dio needs. And it sort of turns off the ego a little bit and it makes you really listen to, I'm here for a purpose. So again, prayer is like a powerful tool, but again, just acting is a powerful tool. Okay, this one's kind of obvious. Avoiding curious questions about the private aspects of the life of the family. This is not gossip hour. Don't gossip, and don't try to find out information you clearly don't need. Pretty basic. Oh, here's a good one. Depending on the time of year you're visiting a student, say you're going, I don't know, around the nativity. What might be a good topic to bring up around nativity? Yeah, yeah. There's just some times of the year where it might be nice to just reference where we're at. Like, talk about, even when you're, Fast of the Apostles, that might be a nice time to talk about something in Acts, reference something in Acts, which is another segue to bring a Bible and perhaps reference it when you're with a student. Because again, these are little ways to remind the student what your purpose is. Like, you're not just there to invade their privacy. You're there to direct them to don't forget your roots, don't forget. And I've, needed that root, I've needed someone to guide me a lot. So again, I'm not saying this because I am squarely solid. I'm saying this because I've needed someone to root me over and over and over again. Okay. So I think this is more or less. So can you read 9 for me, Grace? Because that one
9.
was good. Yeah.
Try to solve any issues related to the students in Sunday school, for example, attendance, attentiveness, behavior, with the help of the present parents. Listen to all, the student and the parents, and try to reach a consensus on how to improve the situation at hand. Remind the parents tactfully of their responsibility for upbringing of the child in the fear of the Lord within the bosom of the church.
Very good. So that was a lot of stuff as to what we should be record keeping about, but it is in your purview and it's your job to ask, confession, how are we there? No one really looks forward to confession, but we all know it's sort of it's necessary. And sometimes we just need a little push, So you don't be naggy, but assess. How long has it been, or who do you confess to? That's important. Establish that they have a father of confession. Communion. If there's a reason, if they've taken it recently, if they haven't, what are the reasons? What's standing in their way? Is it something in your own head? Is it a circumstance? Is it issues you have with the clergy? There are any number of reasons, but find that out. Again, you're not there to bully them. You're there to remind them, trying to just help you, What other things? Fasting. Fasting can be a struggle for people. Find out where are they, where do they want to be, and where are the struggles. Reading the Bible. That's a big one. What stands in, I'm not going to say, are you reading the Bible? The question is, what are the struggles that keep you from regularly reading the Bible? Because as human beings, that is mostly the question we have, right? So those are the sorts of things you want to figure out, because that helps you establish baseline, and it helps you to then know how to steer them. And if there's any certain topics that they want to learn more about, or something they're struggling with, then help them find those resources. Do you have anything to add to that?
Maybe another issue. Remember, now you are in the house with the parents at the beginning. Later you will have one-on-one, but we're just thinking of the logistics. You get in, the family's there, mom and dad, and maybe the siblings. So sometimes I found out that the parents take a chance to just complain about their child. He's not doing that. He's doing that. He's very whatever. So I'm feeling now you are in that binding situation. Which side you're gonna go with. So now you need to be very careful. You need to listen mostly and try to come up with don't get against the child squarely, because now the child maybe has a point or she has a point. On the other side is the parents that, maybe they are, have some really validity in their complaints. So you need in your wording to be very careful. Remember, you are ambassador of Christ. You represent the church coming there. So you have to have those kind of wisdom. Of course, that's a praying come, you pray for wisdom. And when you're sitting there, be careful. And maybe absorb the situation, say some advice from the Bible, and if you can right away solve the problem, fine. If you can't, just give some encouraging words and so forth, and then later you can talk to Abuna or the head of Sunday school or somebody to help you with that issue. But it is important to, sometimes you face that. And be ready that you don't take sides right away or go either way, in a way probably will hurt rather than help.
I'm really glad you brought that up, Uncle Victor. In my experience, I've had pretty good success with, because that happens actually a lot more than I imagined it would, especially with the younger kids. When I was teaching like third grade, it happened all the time when I would do visitation. The parents want to talk about how they don't clean the room and all these other things. They don't like to come to church and all this stuff. So the parents love to do that. What I have had success with is I do my best to stop the parents as soon as I can by kind of saying something like, all the things you're saying are really important, and I think there's something we need. I'd be happy to do my part in addressing if I can. I'm wondering if, since we're together all as a family, we can focus on the things that are positive, that are going really well, and then maybe I can see you again really soon, like just me and you guys talking to the parents, of course, and we can talk about these things, and then we can make a plan about what we might want to do. The idea being we don't want to use the time for the visitation for shaming for the kid or for making them feel like Uncle Victor's saying, like you're picking sides. So I think you can do that by saying, you can really say, parents, what you're saying is important. Kid, what you're saying is important. When we're together, we're just going to be positive, and then we're going to deal with the things that aren't so positive one-on-one, so the kid doesn't have to hear them, and I mean, what happens is the kid gets defensive. So like the kid isn't going to sit and be like, yeah, I don't clean my room. And be like, no, but blah, 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 blah. And then you're stuck in the middle of like something that it's just like, why am I here?
Yeah.
So you can really avoid that by as best you can redirecting them as soon as you notice that this is happening, and saying like what you're saying is important, but let's just do it at a time when I can really listen to you, just you guys.
Yeah, that's really good. All right. Uncle Victor mentioned about bringing, if there's an issue that you don't know how to deal with, kindly and sort of diplomatically calm the storm, but then bring it to someone. Bring it to whoever, the clergy or your co-teachers or, the head of the Sunday school service or a psychiatrist or, just whoever you think is equipped to help you, help them without making it like world news. It's not everyone's business, You're supposed to recruit those who can help you to help them. So again, and then on that
If it's a sensitive, I just want to add one thing really quick, sorry. If it's a sensitive thing and you're talking about an older person who can give consent, like a teenager, make sure you're telling the person that you're going to talk to someone else. So that you're going to involve someone else. Because the last thing you want is to involve someone else, and then Abuna all of a sudden comes and talks to them, and they have no idea. It's like, I didn't talk to Abuna about this. How did Abuna find out?
Yeah.
And that's a breach of trust.
That's like a sure way to lose your rapport.
Lose rapport.
Like,
so what you want to do is you want to assume that, and sometimes it's helpful to even say like everything we talk about stays between us. And then if there's a caveat to that, like it would be helpful to involve Abuna or another servant or a psychiatrist or whoever else. They're going to know about it, so that it doesn't blindside them when they get involved, because that's the last thing you want.
That's really good. And also same goes for if you do, talk about just say you talk about facts or Bible or history or etc., canons, anything. There's plenty we don't know. There's plenty I've not read about or don't remember. So don't BS. If you don't know something, use the words, I don't know, I will get back to you. I'm gonna look it up and I'll get back to you.
Right.
But don't make anything up.
Mhm.
That's really bad. Don't do that. Because no one's going to think differently of you that you're not like a human thesaurus or whatever encyclopedia. But if you make something up and then it's discovered later that you made it up, yeah, well, I mean, I don't have to say it, but credibility is an issue there. But again, no one expects you to know what to do at every given moment. And sometimes your rational self goes out the window when something crazy is happening around you in the moment. Even just like what you know to be true, sometimes you're like, I don't know what to do. I'm just, so you can forget things you do know, and that's okay, but own it. Be okay with it, and cut yourself slack. That's another thing, is give yourself slack. You're trying to do good, so remember, it's okay. And this is a journey for you too. Like, service is supposed to challenge you, and it's supposed to get you also. It's supposed to be your sort of,
Getting out of your comfort zone.
yeah. Like, it's not supposed, you're not supposed to have all the answers. Otherwise, what are you doing here? So recognize that it's okay that you don't know everything. And then just in general, when you're in homes, be encouraging to the family unit. So if there's some way to help, and maybe Mina can, chime in, but if there's an issue in the family, and you can clearly see that maybe the parents might be the weakest link here, like, you've kind of got to do your part to help sort of nudge the family in. I don't even really know how to do this, like, delicately, but
Like an example might be like, say the kid actually expresses, I really want to come to church.
right,
My parents are always sleeping and they never come. They never bring me.
yeah,
Kid can't drive.
something like
So what do you do? So yeah, it is appropriate then to schedule a visitation with the parents. Whether it makes sense to visit or to phone call or whatever, but to intentionally spend time with the parents to problem solve about what's going on. Whether it's something that you can encourage them to bring their own kid,
Mhm.
or there needs to be another way that they can come to church if the family is just unable to bring them. So yeah, I think you're right. Like, sometimes we just have to go
Yeah.
straight to the parents and deal with them.
Would it be over and beyond, like if you did and you problem solved and, would it be over and beyond to say, well, can I offer a ride and bring them to church?
What do you guys think? It's beautiful.
it's lovely.
If
yeah.
you can do that, and if the parents are comfortable with it and the kid is, that would be a gift to you and the kid to be able to spend quality time with them in the car, and to model for them going early, and to be disciplined and regular, and I mean, that would be a fantastic thing.
We used to do this years ago, especially when people were just coming from Egypt. I'm talking about the 70s and 80s and things like that. The people working, the parents, and maybe sometimes they don't have cars, whatever, but Sunday school servant will go around and pick the kids. And parents most likely will come later and pick them up, and if not, we just drive them back. And we actually have some time a van, which goes from we know the names, and go around and collect the kids. So I don't know, maybe we have this issue here in this congregation, and maybe some of you guys take that task and find if there are kids with that situation and do it. That would be great.
And then, I mean, we already sort of mentioned this, but the idea is to have one-on-one time. So if it is with your student, make sure that you've told the parents in advance, I'm just gonna get to know him or her, we want to chat one-on-one, et cetera, so that no one feels blindsided. And then again, if parents need a one-on-one to, discuss certain matters, just don't forget that it's not always, like, there's no mandatory rule where everyone must be present at all times. Like, it's okay to ask for one-on-one time.
I will just actually add, it is, you should by all means have this one-on-one time, because that was the main goal. And the problem, I guess, I personally faced here in the United States, when we go visit in Egypt, I don't know, I'm just bringing another experience here, and non-Muslim people, you know, you get inside the house, you greet the parents if they're even available, and you know, and then you go direct to a special, you know, they have a haute grosse from us, I don't know, like a special room for guests, and then you'll have that one-on-one probably right away. But here in the United States, we have living room and everybody sitting there. We don't want to have it to be social, and then you talk to the parent family, and all the talks will be general, most likely. But you want to have this really special time, you know. So try somehow. That's your whatever you do to have this one-on-one time. That's so crucial.
Which will come with rapport. So
Yeah.
there might be parents who have a hard time not watching their kids, but if you build rapport with the parent, you're more likely to accomplish that goal. Okay, so I think we more or less covered.
There's only one other thing I'd like to add, Annie, if that's okay.
Yeah,
There's these routine visitations, and then there's visitations in crisis. And the visitations in crisis are really important. If you ever find out your kid is in the hospital, or your kid is particularly sick, or there's something special going on, the dog died, there's loss in the family, something like that, it is a really good idea to make a special visit. Say you visited 2 weeks ago, doesn't matter, this is the time to go again. Give them like, you know, I want it, the church is going to be present when there's a particularly hard time in your life. So I just want you to keep that in mind too, that like, these are hard to do because sometimes they happen in inopportune times. You know, someone gets sick and it's really busy, it's Christmas time and you've got 1,000 things to go on. It's worth to talk to the co-servant, like who has the availability to go and just check in the hospital before they're discharged, and just let them know that someone here is representing and is expressing love and care.
Well, it was actually one of the important points. So there's yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, no, it's good. You're like right on top of it. Oh, this one's an important one. So visitations obviously are very important for those who are coming, but for those who are, for whatever reason, not accounted for or have been absent for a while or whatever, those are especially important to actually reach out to. So you're going to have a roster, you'll have phone numbers, and you may not even have met these students, which is the case for me with, you know, people like other people from this class. But sometimes all they need to sort of, you know, jolt them back into like this world is just a phone call, like someone cares, someone misses me. That's actually something like I remember when I first came to this church. Father Cyril like texted me after I like missed a week or something, reached out to me, and I thought that was amazing. Like I'd never been treated that way, never. And I'm like, I still remember that, and it mattered to me, and it makes you want to come, and just being inquired about is a big deal. It's again part of a community, and we have to help each other feel like you're important to the community. And so that's part of your role. Reach out when you don't see them. And just in general, keeping your students in your prayers. You're gonna feel, while you're doing the visitations, you're gonna feel a commitment to them, and you're gonna feel their issues, their pain, you're gonna naturally wanna pray for them. But so it goes without saying, but just so that we're very thorough, pray for your students and pray for your service, because all those prayers help you to do what you're supposed to do better. So yeah, and remember, I know this is like cheesy, but it's true. It's a quote from Maya Angelou. People generally don't remember what you said, but they certainly remember how you feel, made them feel. And even Uncle Victor, when I first met him, and even in talking to my mom, both of them, and I've heard this countless times, everyone remembers like there's that Sunday school teacher that really touched them, and like, you know, like they remember. Like my mom is older and she still remembers like her, you know, the service. So remember, like, you're making them feel like a son of God or a daughter of God. So keep that in mind.
And I just have a question.
Yes.
So my church, we don't tend to do visitations. This is kind of new for me. So when do you start? Like, this might be a really obvious question, but like, when do you start visitations? Like, when they're how old? Because like, you might not go to like a preschooler's house,
That's
but
legit.
like, and then like, when's the appropriate time to like start meeting them like one-on-one? Like, go meet them at a coffee shop. I mean, like, obviously like when they can drive, but like.
Sure. I'm gonna defer to you guys because
Like, I don't-
I'm also going
I don't know
to
how to
admit
do this.
I don't come from a place like I don't historically I haven't had visitations. Let's just put it that way. Yeah.
We need to-
Oh, okay. Well, I'll say, with the really younger kids, I would say still think about visitations. It's not off the table. It might look different, right? You're not going to sit and plan goals and that kind of thing. But what you're doing, so say you're going for a kindergartner or a first grader, you're going to probably spend a little more time with the family. And then what's going to happen, this is my experience with working with younger kids, the kid is going to like want to take you and show you their room and show you their toys. And what you're doing is they're saying, wow, you're in my world. Like, I want to show you my world. And you're going to play with them a little bit. And you're going to maybe just say like, just focus on whatever's developmentally appropriate. For the younger kids, it's going to be something like, God loves you. He's always with you. He cares about how you're doing. He's here to help you grow and love him more. He's teaching us how to love each other, even when people aren't very nice. Like, those are teaching us how to share and be a community. So these are the kinds of things you can do in your play. So I say visit, even the younger kids, even preschool kids. But it might look a little different. You're not going to be like sitting in the salon,
The salon?
Salon, sorry.
Like,
I assumed the English version of salon is salon, but maybe the salon for
In Egypt, they
with the
call it
younger
salon.
kids. Salon, yeah, that room where people.
neat.
It's only for doves.
I think it's also known as a living room.
It's like got the French furniture that is so uncomfortable.
one
That,
can
The closest thing in
Um,
English is atrium.
Atrium? Okay.
Oh, for real?
I didn't even.
Perfect. So you're not going to do that with the younger kids. With the older kids, they need to. If you're going to meet them out, they of course need to be driving, and if they're a minor, you still need to get permission from the parents for them to do that. There's no like hard and fast rule. A lot of my experience about what I did is I would go to the house, pick them up, say hi to the parents,
Oh, that's a good idea.
and then like just go to a local place, right? Just like, is it great? We'll just be an hour. They know exactly what location. They have my number. If anything goes wrong, they can give me a call. They know where I am. They know where the kid is, and we'll be back at this time. So that works pretty well too.
Remember that still there is definitely a need to visit the home because as Anne-Marie told us, you need to know the environment, you need to see where they live, and there will be that special bond when you are inside their territory. Another doctor here can explain to us those psychological things. Where, here you are, you're part of the family in a way, or a close friend when you are sitting in their home. So, of course, this is different and nice also and good to do, but you need still to go and visit in the house.
Also, if you notice a student is really resistant or weary of letting you come to their house, this should be kind of a red flag. Because, kids know when their environments are different than the norm or embarrassing or something's weird. So if someone really doesn't want you to come, you try to figure out why.
Yeah, it is. There are a lot of, here you are, I guess, you realize now, how, your whole service as a servant in Sunday school is important. And there are things there needs to be addressed right. And that's part of, knowing the environment, see why they don't wanna, they get, invite you to their homes or whatever happened. And I wanna emphasize again and again that whatever you know or hear in that visit or afterwards is really considered a top secret, is a sacred thing in the same time. Because any mistake here will definitely